All right, welcome to today's show. So, I'm going to talk about what is Bitcoin, what is MicroStrategy, and I'm going to make it very, very, very simple. And oftentimes, recently, I was at some parties recently talking to people about Bitcoin and MicroStrategy. And the number one question I would get from people when I would talk about Bitcoin is like, what the heck is Bitcoin? And we have a hard time understanding it because it's a digital thing. And it's like, I can't touch Bitcoin. What is Bitcoin? And then when you get into the subject of like, what is MicroStrategy? If somebody doesn't understand what Bitcoin is and you start getting into MicroStrategy, you just confuse the whole damn party, right? So at the end of the day, my goal is to make this simple. And I believe that if one has knowledge in a particular area, they can control that area and be very prosperous in that area. But if one doesn't understand the basic thing they're doing or investing in, then they'll never actually thrive in that area because they won't understand it. So somebody with knowledge has great power, has great control of an area, can succeed and become wealthy in anything they do, right? Think of somebody who's really good at as an athlete. They have great knowledge of the area. They got great control. They can go on to be a professional, right? Somebody who's a great engineer. They got great knowledge of the area. They got great control in the area. They can go on and they can be a great engineer. Well, if I'm going to create wealth over time, I want to have great knowledge of digital money. And so one of the purposes of this channel is to make understanding Bitcoin simple, to make understanding MicroStrategy simple, because Bitcoin is obviously the future, but it's also present. It's here, and we need to understand it. So I've put this together to make some very simple analogies to get people to understand, like, what is Bitcoin and what is MicroStrategy. And there's many terms we hear that are thrown around in the world of Bitcoin. We're like, what the heck is it, man? And like a lot of times I was at a party recently, a Christmas party, and I was talking to somebody like, well, what is Bitcoin? Like, I can't even touch the thing. It's digital. It's like thin air. Like it's floating around in air. How does it have any value, man? And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to explain to you what Bitcoin is in simple ways so that you can get it. So that's what I want to do tonight, because hanging around parties, and then I'll mention MicroStrategy. So like, what the heck is MicroStrategy? Like, what is it? And I'm like, okay, well, first, if we don't know what Bitcoin is, then it's going to be very hard to understand what MicroStrategy is. All right. So I put this together very simple. I'm going to go through some examples here in sequence, step by step, and just give some analogies, have some fun with it. And when you understand the thing, I believe you can excel in the thing and get wealthy in the thing, and also help other people with the thing. So let's jump in a little bit. Okay, so what is Bitcoin in simple terms? Again, my goal is to make this super simple, make money simple, make the game simple, and make it a game. Okay, so Bitcoin's digital money, right? Exists only online, right? So oftentimes people go like, what am I buying, man? I'm not like getting a physical coin or a gold bar. What am I getting? Like, you're buying pieces of information. Let's just keep it simple, okay? You're buying pieces of information, right? So how is this even possible, right? Now, most of us know this, or we all know this, right? That Bitcoin was created in 2009. It was created by a group or somebody by the name of Satoshi Nakamoto, and they made up a set of rules, right? Like when you hear the word protocol, they basically made up a set of rules. Like, this is the protocol. This is the set of rules that everybody's going to follow as it relates to Bitcoin, right? And part of the rules were that there was going to be just a limited supply, right? Those are part of the rules. So it's like, great. Like, it's like you play a game and there's a set of rules, right? And the only way you can play the game is if you follow the rules. And if you follow the rules, you know if you're winning or you know if you're losing, right? So think of Bitcoin and think of it as it was created by a set of rules, okay? Like a protocol, all right? And part of the rules to the game of Bitcoin is very simple, that there is a limited supply, okay? And so this kind of makes the game like super valuable. And the basic idea is there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin, okay? So in fact, it's not the idea, it's the rule. The rule is there will only be 21 million Bitcoin. So this makes it special, right? It makes it rare, like a rare collectible. Like, there's only so much. I want some, right? So it makes it rare. Versus like gold, even though people compare Bitcoin to gold and call it digital gold, gold, you can, there's more and more gold that's mined every single year. So there's not only so much gold in the world, we can't quantify how much gold is in the world, but with Bitcoin, we can quantify it and say there's only 21 million Bitcoins or 21 million of this digital gold Bitcoin, right? So it makes it rare, it makes it special. Okay. So when you buy Bitcoin, like what are you buying? And this is the thing when I was at a Christmas party the other day, like what am I buying? What do I get for when I buy the thing? Where does it go? Right? When you buy it, you're basically you get a unique digital code, right? And the code basically proves that you own a part of this limited supply. So it's not air. You're not like buying something into the ethers. Like, where did it go? It's like owning a digital certificate of something, right? And you got this digital certificate or this code, and you can use it to like, send it places or buy things with it or exchange it and stuff. And so you have this digital code you can use, right? So in short, with Bitcoin, you're buying like a special kind of digital money. It follows a set of rules and it can be used online. That's the simplicity, right, of what it is, right? So if we put it in super simple terms, that's what it is, right? Digital money. You're buying a piece of code. You're buying a code, right? It's like a digital certificate, right? Now, if you put it into an analogy, because sometimes when we're talking about like things that are digital or code, and we're not technical experts and we're not digital people, we're like, I need a physical thing. Like I walk around with this body, it's a physical thing. I touch this desk, it's a physical thing. I have this phone, it's a physical thing. So if we can make like Bitcoin and put it into an analogy of a physical thing that we already understand, we can compare it to that thing and we can understand it better, right? So like, think of 21 million Bitcoins as a big puzzle, right? And each piece of that puzzle is a Bitcoin, right? So if you had a puzzle, like a puzzle piece, each piece of that puzzle, 21 million Bitcoins is a big, big puzzle. And each piece of the puzzle is a Bitcoin, right? So your digital code, like what's the digital code? When you buy Bitcoin, you're getting one specific piece of that puzzle. And that piece of the puzzle is your unique digital code. That's what you're getting. Okay. So, like, if I thought of it that I'm buying a puzzle piece, right? And I got this puzzle piece and that's my digital code, I can understand that because I know what the hell a puzzle is, right? I played with puzzles when I was a kid. Those little pieces you put together. Well, if that was my digital code and I owned a piece of the puzzle, like I owned a Bitcoin, right? One of the 21 million pieces of the puzzle, I owned one piece. I understand that, right? So simple, right? So you're not just getting like any code out there on the internet. You're getting a unique piece of the entire 21 million Bitcoin puzzle, right? So let's give like a different analogy here to make it even more simple, right? For those of us who didn't like puzzles or something, let's make the analogy even more simple. So think of it like a concert ticket, right? So think of the protocol, the set of rules for Bitcoin, right? Think of like a concert ticket as a protocol. So think of the rules of Bitcoin like the rules for a concert, right? There's a limited number of tickets available for the show. So now let's think of tickets as Bitcoins, right? Each ticket is like a Bitcoin, right? So I can understand that. Like I get a ticket, I get a Bitcoin. But there's only so many tickets, right? Like imagine you're going to the greatest concert on planet Earth. Like there's this great new band out that nobody's ever heard about, right? But they're like, there's going to be the biggest concert on planet Earth, and there's only 21 million tickets available to this concert. And you don't know what the hell it is, or you don't know who the band is, but a lot of people are talking about like, this is going to be an incredible concert. There's only 21 million seats, 21 million tickets available for the concert. And once they're sold out, no more can be made. It's impossible. You can't get an extra ticket. You can't make one up. You can't fake one. There's no way to get an extra ticket. No way. Okay. So we think of Bitcoin, right? Each ticket is like a Bitcoin, right? And there's only so many tickets, 21 million Bitcoins available for that concert. That's it. Once they're sold out, the tickets are gone. The 21 million tickets are gone. The 21 million Bitcoins are gone, right? So just like when you go buy a concert ticket, right? You get a unique piece of paper, right? And I think like, you would even get on a concert ticket, like a little code thing on there to know that it's yours, like a ticket number. So you buy a ticket to a concert, you get a unique piece of paper, right? And that's like your digital code, right? When you're buying Bitcoin. And that proves that you have a spot at the concert, that you have a ticket to the concert, right? So this is like getting your own Bitcoin, which proves you own a piece of the total supply. So when you go buy your ticket, also known as your Bitcoin, right? That digital code is proof that you own a piece of that supply. Make sense? So the Bitcoin network is like a concert where everybody follows the ticket rules, and each ticket represents ownership of a limited number of seats. Okay, so does this make sense so far? So if you're just joining us, I'm giving an example of Bitcoin using some analogies of like, I often get the question, like, what the hell is this thing? Like when I'm buying it, what do I get? Think of it as a concert. There's only 21 million tickets available to the concert. Biggest concert on planet Earth ever, right? You want a ticket. Why? You might not even have heard of the band before Bitcoin. You're like, who the hell is this band? I know a lot of people are going. And in fact, there's 19.5 million tickets sold. And that's the reality of Bitcoin right now. There's 19.5 million of Bitcoin that have been issued, Bitcoin that have been bought up already. And so if there's only 21 million tickets to this concert of Bitcoin, 19.5 million of the tickets are sold out. You better get a ticket to the concert, right? That's the idea. And so if people are there and they're like, wow, this is going to be the greatest concert on planet Earth, the concert of Bitcoin, I want a ticket. There's only 1.5 million left. And if you're looking at like, wow, there's 19.5 million are bought, I got to imagine there's something good going on here. And there's only what, 1.5 million tickets available? That's Bitcoin. Okay. So that's the simplicity of what it is. Now, Bitcoin's like digital cash, right? It lives online and it allows people to send money directly to anyone, anywhere, right? So think about like when people talk about decentralized, like what does decentralized actually mean? So there's some terms I'm going to get into here that are used quite often. And then it's easy to gloss over these and be like, what is decentralized? What does that mean? It's just basically like it's a playground. You're playing a game and it's without a referee. And so when you think about the decentralized network of Bitcoin, think of the players themselves like you and me. We're the ones that are enforcing the rules, right? So you don't have like a central referee that's like, all right, this is how you play the game. No, you have the players themselves like you and me. We're the ones that are enforcing the rules. So Bitcoin works the same way. There's no central authority that actually controls it. There's no referee that controls the entire Bitcoin blockchain. Hence, the fact that it is a decentralized network. And that's basically what that means, right? So we know that only 21 million will ever exist. So it's like rare golden tickets, man, like Willy Wonka, right? It's like, I want a golden ticket, right? So the scarcity is what makes it valuable. So we could sit here, and if you're just joining us, I've been giving examples of like what Bitcoin is in very, 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 very simple terms. But like if you're just joining us, like I want a golden ticket, man. I want the ticket to the best concert on earth. There's only 21 million of them. It's rare. And so oftentimes when people are trying to understand like what is Bitcoin, why does it have value? One of the reasons is because it's so rare, right? And the cool thing is like the fact that there was a protocol, that there are rules that were written that says there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. That's what makes it rare. And that's pretty damn cool. All right. So that's a good thing. It's a really good thing. All right. So let's talk about like transparency, right? So, you know, you hear a lot of this stuff of like early on when Bitcoin came out, oh, like, you know, got criminals on there and they're laundering money and using Bitcoin and they're using it for bad purposes and blah, 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 right? But the cool thing about like Bitcoin and the blockchain is the transparency. So if you think about like, people wonder like what is the blockchain itself? I'm going to get into that, right? So, but if you think of it as like a giant bulletin board, right? Like we all know what like a giant bulletin board is, right? So imagine you had like a bulletin board on your wall. And every time somebody bought a Bitcoin, somebody put up a little sticky note and they're like, boom, transaction made, Bitcoin bought, right? And then another Bitcoin was bought and somebody put it up on the bulletin board like, boom, another Bitcoin bought, right? And then boom, another Bitcoin bought, right? So the transparency of Bitcoin is the fact that there's this gigantic bulletin board, okay, called the blockchain. And this gigantic bulletin board is where all the transactions of Bitcoin are recorded. So, and a record of it ensures that it's done honestly. And so, like, every transaction that was ever made for Bitcoin and that has ever been made is stored up on this huge bulletin board, right? Now we know it's a digital bulletin board. It's not a like this actual bulletin board, but it's a digital bulletin board. And all the transactions are stored on it. So from a transparency standpoint, we should feel good because once a transaction is made, it can never be changed. And so if you look at other institutions out there, right? I mean, how many times have we heard? We've heard sometimes, not all the time, that there's large institutions out there that have like doctored the books, or they've fudged the books, or they put on transactions that weren't true, or they lied about what was on the books. The beautiful thing about Bitcoin and the blockchain, this gigantic bulletin board where all the transactions are stored, the very beautiful thing about it is that it's transparent. And every transaction, every purchase, every made is on there. That feels good, right? That like feels really good. So it's pretty cool that there's like no referee, right? And we'll talk about like the group of referees. Let's call them a group of friends. We'll talk about them in a minute, the friends that keep it safe, okay? But there's no one central referee like a government that says, we're going to control Bitcoin. There's not. So it makes it special, right? There's a set of rules, and all of us together work to keep the rules in place. And the protocol set up of 21 million Bitcoin, there will never be more. That's never going to be changed. So this is pretty cool, right? And, oh yeah, so Casey's saying, I own Bitcoin and MicroStrategy. Me too. And Jake's like, yes, right? And Z's like, I'm red 40% of MicroStrategy. You're down 40%. Okay, hang tight. I'm not going to give financial advice. This channel is not about financial advice, just about education. I totally get it. If you're down in MicroStrategy, I get it. My personal viewpoint is I'm holding, and I'm holding throughout next year, okay? So I'll let you know what I'm doing as the year goes on. So back to the education on Bitcoin. This is cool. So it's like we have a blockchain, like a big bulletin board, right, in the digital space, right? And all the transactions are on it. I like that. I feel good about that. How about you? It's transparent. Can never be changed. So that's a cool thing, right? So now here comes the question, like, what's a miner, right? Like, you heard about this stuff years ago, and I don't know if you've watched me talking last night, but like I bought mining equipment back in 2018. Now, technically, I didn't buy it. I gave a dude like $100,000. I'm like, yo, here's it. Go do that mining thing, right? And at the time, I didn't even know what the hell a miner was. So it just sounded like a cool concept. I heard about Bitcoin. I owned my first Bitcoin in 2018 because we mined it. And so like I got in the game, right? And it was exciting. But I didn't know what mining was, right? So I bought into something I didn't know what it was. And the whole purpose of what I'm doing tonight is like to go through the basic understanding of what are these things, like what makes up the blockchain, what makes up Bitcoin, why is it this way? And if we understand this, I think we can have more confidence in the future of it, right? So what happens with a miner? All right, so let's say I go buy some Bitcoin, right? The first thing that happens is like a miner has a computer, guys. Right? You can get into the details about what it is, but it's a freaking computer. Let's just call it what it is, okay? And so the job of the miner is they go verify the transaction. So the first thing they do is they like, in simple terms, they kind of go check to make sure that the money's there, right? Like you're buying with cash, right? You're buying some Bitcoin, so they check, is the money there, right? First thing. Second thing is, once they verify that you bought, right? They put your transaction, right? They verify your money. They put your transaction on a block, right? So when you think about block, just think of a block as like a notepad, right? Just so a block's like a notepad. So you go buy some Bitcoin, the miner who runs the computer, imagine the miner like runs up, right? You want to buy some Bitcoin. He's like, okay, I'm going to take your purchase and I'm going to write it on a notepad. So it gets put on a block. Think of it as a notepad. I have a notepad here, and the miner's like, all right, transaction, let's put it on the notepad. That's what the miner does. Puts it on the notepad, right? So when you think of blockchain, what do you think blockchain is? It's a chain of little notepads like this. I'm using a notepad as just like a metaphor, right? But it's a chain of notepads, okay? A block is where all your transactions are stored. And then there's a chain of them. That's what the blockchain is. Okay. And I think on like every block, there's like something to like 1,500 to 2,000 transactions on a block. Okay. It varies, but that's approximately what it is. All right. So pretty simple, right? So the miner dude is like, he takes your transaction, he puts it on a notepad, and on the notepad, this block, there's a bunch of transactions on there. Like I buy some, goes on the notepad. You buy some, goes on the notepad. Joe buys some, goes on the notepad. Sammy buys some, goes on the notepad. Sarah buys some, goes on the notepad. Emily buys some, goes on the notepad. We keep filling up the notepad, which is a block. And when the block gets filled, right? The way the block gets completed, okay, is the miners, they use this computer and they solve like this really complex puzzle, okay? So the way a block, the metaphor here is like a notepad, right? The notepad has a lot of transactions on it, the block, right? A lot of transactions, a lot of people buying Bitcoin, filling up the notepad. And then for the block to be complete, one of the miners needs to come along with their super whiz-bang computer and solve this puzzle. They solve a puzzle. And then the block, with all the transactions on it, is filled up, it's complete, and the block gets added to the chain. That's it. So what is a blockchain? It's a bunch of transactions on a notepad. Call it a digital notepad, which is a block, right? Digital notepad like a block. Bunch of transactions on this pad in a chain. One notepad, another notepad, another notepad, another notepad. We got a chain of transactions. That's the blockchain. That's what it is. And the miners are running around to add your transactions to the block. Make sense? And why would the miners do this? Pretty simple. The moment they complete a block, which is a whole bunch of transactions, the moment they complete a block, guess what happens? They get paid. They get paid in transaction fees, and they get paid in Bitcoin. So when you hear about these companies, you're like, what the hell is a mining company? What is a mining company? I don't know what a mining company is. First, just understand what the miners do, right? The miners, you go to buy Bitcoin, okay? I'm putting this in super, super simple terms, right? You go to buy Bitcoin, and the miner is going to verify that you're buying the Bitcoin, and then they add it to the notepad, the block on the blockchain. So they add your transaction, Joe's transaction, Sammy's transaction, Emily's transaction. They fill up the block. They verify it all with a big supercomputer to make sure it's not a cheat, a false, a lie. Make sure it's real. And then they're like, okay, it's real. All the transactions on this block, we're going to ship it onto the chain officially. It is now officially on the blockchain, and it's permanent, and it will never be changed. Period. Make sense? Okay. Thanks, Jake. It's very simple. It's a very simple thing, right? That's what the blockchain is. That's what it is. Okay. And then they rinse and repeat. They do it again. So it's great. We want the miners, right? Because without the miners, the blockchain doesn't exist. And there's tons of them out there. And how cool is that, right? Think of a bunch of like treasure hunters. Like they're hunting for gold, right? The Bitcoin's the gold. Like, okay, I got to go find a transaction. All right, I'm going to take a transaction, the gold, the Bitcoin gold, the digital gold. I'm going to add it to the block. All right, got a bunch of transactions on the block. Going to add it to the chain. Boom, chain secure, blockchain secure on. Let's create another block. And the blockchain grows and grows and grows and grows and grows. And so think about like notepads. Each block is a notepad filled with transactions, and another notepad, and another notepad, and another notepad, and another notepad, all across the world, man. And you got this huge, massive chain, the blockchain. And that's where it's stored. Make sense? So that's pretty cool, right? I can dig it. I can have that. So now it's like, okay, then you hear about the nodes, right? Anybody ever hear this term, the nodes? Like, what in God's green earth is a node, man? Right? Okay, what's the difference, right? The node, the node. Thanks, man. Thanks, Dan, for the like and the subscribe. Like and subscribe if you want, right? So the node. What is the node, right? A node is just another computer. Okay. So like to put it in simple terms, because when I look at this stuff, I'm always like looking up the words, understanding it. Like, what's the definition? Getting the definition in simple terms, using it and figuring it out. So Like a node, I'm like, I don't want to know everything about the node. I just want to know basically what's a node. It's a computer. Okay, great. Great. So within the whole realm of the blockchains, where you have the miners verifying the transactions, you have the miners loading the transactions up onto the block, right? And they stay there now forever, and then they go onto the blockchain. What's the purpose of the nodes? Like, what do they do? Good question, right? So a node is a computer that stores a copy of the entire Bitcoin blockchain. Holy cow, right? I'm going to give it to you again. A node is a computer that stores a copy of the entire Bitcoin blockchain. Okay. So if you think about it, there's a bunch of nodes. And so like if the miners are running around and the miners are like taking the transactions and putting them onto the block, and I use the analogy of the block being like a notepad, right? So you have like a physical mass, even though it's not a physical mass. So the miners are running around and adding the transactions to the block so that the blockchain can exist. The node stores a copy of the entire blockchain, guys. Wow, right? I mean, see how secure this is? This is dope, right? So think of the nodes as like friends, right? If you think of the miners as like, they're like treasure hunters. They're running around to find the Bitcoin, verify the Bitcoin, add it to the block, right? Well, think of the nodes as like friends running computers. And the friends are going to make sure that everybody's got the correct copy of all the transactions ever made on the blockchain. That's pretty dope, right? And if one friend is like, yep, I got a copy of all the transactions on the blockchain, that's me, node number one. Node number two friend is like, yeah, I got a copy of all the transactions on the blockchain. But node number three has got a little bit of data that's off. Node number one, node number two, fill in his friend, node number three. And they're like, make sure you got the data. And we all have the exact data. And we're all telling each other the same story. And it's all 100% the same. That's pretty fucking cool, right? Like, really? Right? So nodes, people run those are like our friends. They make sure like the big master blockchain, all the copy of all the transactions on the blockchain are stored on a node. And every other node has that same copy. And every other node has that same copy. Imagine you're in a library, right? You're in a library. And library one has all the exact same books. That's a node. And then library two has all the exact same books. And then library three has all the exact same books. All the nodes have a copy of all the exact same books. So all the nodes have a copy of all the transactions ever made on the blockchain. Pretty cool, right? And they're like friends working together and making sure that the data is accurate and it protects us. And if one node gets down and stops operating, guess what? All the other nodes got the information. It's cool. Pretty sweet, right? Is that pretty cool, huh? Like, if you guys have any questions, you can put them in. Is that cool? Like, put it in the chat if you think it's cool. Like, that's cool, man. Like, that's what a node is. So we have all these terms like, okay, simple. Bitcoin, it's written by a protocol, right? It's just a set of rules. The rules say there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. So if it's 21 million Bitcoin, we're thinking like the greatest concert ever on planet Earth, right? And we all want to go to the concert, and there's only 21 million tickets. You imagine the biggest concert ever to exist. But like the Bitcoin concert is relatively a new band, so not everybody knows about it. But it's spreading like wildfire, and people are like, there's 19.5 million tickets sold already. There's only 1.5 million left. Who's going to get the last tickets to the greatest concert on Earth? That's it. And every time you buy a ticket, you're buying a piece of code. That's it. When you buy a Bitcoin, you're buying a piece of code. It's like a digital certificate. That's what you're buying. Okay. But like, so I'm at a Christmas party saying this to somebody, but how could a digital certificate, Ted? Like, how the hell does a digital certificate have any value? It's like, well, how does a piece of paper, like a dollar bill, have any value? Right? How does that? That's just a piece of paper. How does that have any value? Right? So it's we'll get into that in just a minute because I'm about to get into the money supply and the dollar in just a little bit. But like, it has value because it's scarce. Like I just talked about at the beginning, there's only going to be 21 million. And so do you want things that are scarce? You want diamonds because they're scarce. You want gold because they're scarce. The difference with Bitcoins is it's finite. There will only ever be 21 million. And with diamonds, you can't say that about it. You can't say that about gold either. Okay. So I think that's pretty damn cool, right? So now we have these nodes. We have Bitcoin. We have the rule. There's only 21 million. We have the miners that every time you go buy a Bitcoin, a miner comes and verifies it. He's like, okay, dude, it's real money you're giving me. That's cool. And the miner's like, yep, with his computer's like, yeah, okay, I'm going to verify the transaction. I'm going to put it on the notepad, right? Which is, of course, a block. It's just like a digital notepad. Puts it on the notepad, goes in there. Next transaction comes on the notepad. Next transaction comes on the notepad. Next transaction comes on the notepad. And boom, you have an entire block, a digital notepad filled with transactions. Once it's filled, then another digital notepad is created, then another, then another, then another, then another. And then you have a whole chain of digital notepads or digital ledgers. And that's the blockchain. That's all it is. Okay. So that's what you got. And then you have the nodes, which are the other computers that come in. And as I was saying, just for those of you joining us, the nodes are like friend number one, right? The nodes have a copy of all the transactions ever done on the blockchain. And node number one, let's just call it a computer, right? Computer number one has a copy. Computer number two has a copy. Computer number three has a copy. They all have the same copy. And the analogy I was just using, if you're just joining us, it's like going into a library, and library one has the exact same books. Library two has the exact same books. Library three has the exact same books. They all have the same books. They're verifying that the data is 100% the same and accurate. And that is part of what protects the blockchain. That's pretty damn cool. Okay. Pretty cool. Good. So we got that. If you're just joining us, we're making it simple. Zhang's asking me, do I like Tesla or MicroStrategy better? I like MicroStrategy better in the short run. I think Tesla, because MicroStrategy is kind of a new animal that we're dealing with here. It's not financial advice, but like I swapped out my Tesla, my full bag of Tesla early in the year and bought MicroStrategy before the stock split and dumped it all into MicroStrategy. And then watched MicroStrategy boom, and then I rotated some profits back into Tesla, and I'm holding a big bag of MicroStrategy right now. And so for now, my play is MicroStrategy for the next 8 months for sure. And depending on what happens in 2025, I'm going to decide what I'm going to do with my MicroStrategy bag based on the strategic Bitcoin reserve and what the US does with it. If other nation states follow, I'm also going to determine what happens with corporations adding more and more Bitcoin to their balance sheet, watching what happens with MicroStrategy. But I'm holding MicroStrategy for now. I'm not selling this whole thing down to 299 or 300 today. Does not shake me in the least bit. But also remember, I got in super early. Okay. So I can watch it go up like it did to 530 MicroStrategy and go down to 300 and not have a lot of attention on it. Okay. Because I'm still heavily in the profit. But if you're looking to buy now, you just need to make the decision, like, what do you think is going to be the better run over the next 8 months? My personal viewpoint is that MicroStrategy is going to run up a lot faster over the next 8 months than Tesla. Over the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, Tesla is going to be a rocket ride. And so will I continue to own Tesla? Yes. Will I roll profits into Tesla? Yes. When I'm going to do that, I don't know yet. Okay, cool. So, great. So, I'll talk about MicroStrategy in a moment. So to answer that, I believe Sailor can't use the ATM 2 weeks out to. Right. So yeah, I'll get to some of those in a question. Hey, Richard, what's going on? The gifts on there. We got Tony Zhang on there too. So I'll get to MicroStrategy in a minute because we're getting there. I'm just going through the basics of like what is Bitcoin, so everybody understands it. So we went through what is Bitcoin, what are miners, what are nodes. I hope you guys understand it from what I explained. I tried to make it really simple. And so now what I want to get into right now is just a little bit more about Bitcoin, and let's just go simply into like last year and the ROI over last year, and let's make the terms pretty simple, right? So we know that Bitcoin more than doubled. It did about 121% last year, right? So if you're new to Bitcoin, I mean, obviously it's like a roller coaster. It's up and down. If you're if you're new to MicroStrategy, it's not like a roller coaster. It's more like a spaceship that goes up and down and up and down. So you have to be willing to have the volatility to be in these things. Okay, I've been in Bitcoins for 7 years now, so I understand the volatility of Bitcoin, and I'm getting used to the volatility of MicroStrategy, being in it for about a year now. So So that's kind of where I'm at with that. So here's the main case of why I wanted to go through what Bitcoin is, and now also why I want to go through why I think why me personally, why I chose to put money into Bitcoin. Okay. And I'm going to go through some fundamental basic things that I think are really important, because if we understand these basic things, then we'll understand why I believe I personally am choosing different investments in this day and age than I was 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago. Let's call it 8 years ago. Okay. So first and foremost, like when you get inflation numbers of what, like Jerome Powell came out and talked about inflation, but I'm going to talk about something more important than him coming to the table and saying there's like, where inflation is 2 point something percent or whatever it was, right? The big problem we have is that the money supply is going up by 6.59% per year since the beginning of time of us having the dollar. So every year it goes up 6.59%. Now, if you look at its peak year was in 2021. It grew by about 27% in 2021. So, like, that's a problem, right? And so we know if we just take the base case scenario of like the money supply going up by, let's just call it about 7% per year, right? But if you look at the history of it, it's 6.59% per year. If you look at it during COVID, and the worst of it was in 2021, it went up by 27% that year. So that would mean that if there was $1 in supply in 2020, then in 2021, we had $1.27 in supply. The money supply went up by 27%. So essentially what that means is the value of your dollar went down by 27%. Does that make sense? And I think this is just an important basic concept that we hear talked about a lot. And we hear people talk about this a whole heck of a lot, of like the increase of the money supply. But what does it actually mean to your wealth? And like, if you were to project it out and look 100 years into the future, like what would your dollar actually be worth 100 years into the future if the money supply keeps going up by 6.59% per year? Now, I think it's going up by more. If you look at recently what's happening, and with the debt growing larger in the US, we're going to keep printing money. And so in the last 4 or 5 years, it's gone up by more than 6.59%. But let's just take the bottom conservative case of 6.59%, right? So Joe's saying, I just want to chime in on the comments here. Joe's saying, I was having the same discussion with myself this morning about Tesla or more MicroStrategy, and came to the same plan. MicroStrategy for the rest of the year, then reassess. Yeah, I just listen. My personal viewpoint is MicroStrategy is going to be a rocket ride in 2025. Right? Everybody's entitled to their viewpoint. All the data that I've seen, everything that I've studied on it, everything that I follow every single day on it, I look at it every single day, I study it, and everything that I'm seeing right now, I'm like, it's going to be a rocket ride. And when I got in early 2024, right at the beginning of the year, it was a rocket ride, man. If you even look at the return of MicroStrategy over the last 12 months in 2024, it was still a 359% ROI, guys. So, like, if you judge it over what the last 2 months and you're looking at MicroStrategy, I get it. Like, if you got in later or you got in at high points and you're like, oh my God, I just lost a whole bunch of my portfolio, I totally get it, right? But if you didn't sell, number one, you didn't lose it yet. And then number two, if you look at the context of like, look at a broader time horizon, look at 12 months, what MicroStrategy did, 359%. And despite the fact that it went up all the way up to 530 this year, okay, you could say technically, I think it was 479 or something, because that was in the regular trading hours. But after trading hours, I remember looking and seeing the MicroStrategy price at 530. So if it was at 530 and it went down to 300, that's a big drop, right? But let's not forget where it was at the beginning of the year. It went up 359%, even with the big drop that it had in the last month. So let's look like broader time horizons. I would never invest in it to go like, hey, I'm going to get in and get out unless I'm trading something, right? But I would never, when I'm looking to invest in something that I believe in, I'm looking to invest in and hold it for a long period of time. Okay. Just like Bitcoin, I've invested in Bitcoin back in 2018. Now, have I taken some profits? Have I sold some Bitcoin? Yeah. Okay. So you have to look at your own point of view on it, but like, and what you think is the right thing. If I were to choose where I'm going to put my money, MicroStrategy or Tesla, over the next 8 months, again, I have some money in Tesla and I have a bunch more in MicroStrategy. And if you're just joining, I rotated out of Tesla early in the year, and I put it all into MicroStrategy. And so far, that move was by far the best move. Okay, but there's no comparison. All right. So, will I roll back into Tesla in 2025? Some into Tesla, I will. Okay. So that's just what I'm doing. All right. So back to what we're talking about. We're talking about Bitcoin, and now we're getting into MicroStrategy. But what I want to talk about now is get back to the point that I was talking about, the dollar. Because the point and case that I want to make is, if you hold the dollar over a period of 100 years, and we print about 7% more money every single year, then in 100 years, your dollar will be worth 17 cents. So, I mean, that's pretty alarming, right? Like, that's pretty alarming, right? All right. And your dollar would be worth less. Now, you could do the same thing with gold, guys. And if you were to put it in, like, you could put it into AI or ChatGPT right now and check it. But you also have to look at gold in the same way, because just like we print more money of 7% more per year, with gold, there's more gold that's mined every year. So if the supply of gold there's more and more being mined every year, then that means that what your gold is worth today, you're going to lose value in your gold likely over a 100-year period or 50-year period, because there's more supply coming out. And that is really that's the base case. That really is the base case for Bitcoin, like of why we value Bitcoin, or why I value Bitcoin over gold, why I value Bitcoin, of course, over the dollar, because the dollar keeps losing more and more of its value. Because there's a limited supply of Bitcoin, and there's only 21 million Bitcoin, and there's a finite supply, actually. So that's simple. So it's important to look at what's happening with the printing of money, because if we don't understand that, then people are going to think that they're investing in the stock market and making 10%. And when the money supply is going up by 7%, you're not making 10%, you're really making 3%. Okay. So that's just an important piece of it. So now on to the simple version of MicroStrategy. Let's talk about MicroStrategy. Okay. So just a little history. I'm going to keep this simple. I'll answer some questions as soon as I get done with this. But again, the whole purpose of this video is to keep things simple. Okay. So MicroStrategy 2020, they bought 250 million worth of Bitcoin. Okay. And so that was like a milestone. If you don't know what MicroStrategy is, it's actually a software company. They provide business intelligence software to companies. And so that's what it was founded upon. The revenue and the worth of MicroStrategy has very, 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 very little to do with their software company, and 99 point something percent to do with the Bitcoin that they hold. Okay. So the whole idea of MicroStrategy is like, hey, I'm going to store my cash into digital gold, Bitcoin, rather than having it sit in cash. All right. And when companies keep their money in their treasure chest or their treasury, somebody in their treasury is managing their cash, right? So like MicroStrategy had $250 million of cash in there. They had somebody looking over the treasury, managing the cash flow that's in there. And somebody, including Michael Saylor and obviously the board, looked at it and said, hey, if we keep managing our cash the same way, where we're earning 3 to 4% on it, or 5% on it, or what have you, and the money supply keeps going up by 7% a year, or 10% a year, or 27% like it did in 2021, basically cash is like a melting iceberg. It's melting away. We're going to be screwed. So they took their 250 million of cash and they put it into digital gold, Bitcoin, right? How much does MicroStrategy own today? I mean, this gives you the significance of who they are and what they're doing. They own 446,000 Bitcoin, guys, 41.1 billion. That's a lot of freaking Bitcoin. Now, I don't know what the exact supply is. The exact supply is around 2% of the entire Bitcoin supply. So you have to research and check that in a new unit of time. But also, here's the other big thing, and this is why I'm also super bullish on MicroStrategy in 2025. And you could say that because Saylor's been issuing a ton of shares recently to buy more Bitcoin, because he's been issuing a ton of shares, right? I think they bought 15, almost, I think 14 billion more Bitcoin in the last 8 weeks. So it gives you perspective. In 2020, they bought $250 million worth of Bitcoin, and they bought more and more over time. But in the last 8 weeks, they bought 14 billion Bitcoin. And so to give you the context, here's why I'm bullish with the master plan, okay? They came out a couple months ago and said, we're going to buy 42 billion more Bitcoin over the next 3 years. Guys, they bought 14 billion of that in the last 2 months. That's crazy. That's crazy. So one, the fact that they're buying more and more Bitcoin is gobbling up the supply, number one. So the supply is being gobbled up. So that means it's going to push the price up, right? The second thing is they're super aggressive on their plan. And so the fact that they had a $42 billion plan and they already used 14 billion of it in 2 months or 3 months, I mean, they're going to blow through their $42 billion plan. They're not going to blow through it in 3 years. They're going to blow through it, I think, in less than a year. And maybe they blow through it in the second quarter of next year. Imagine that if they blow through buying all 42 billion. That would be nuts, right? And I think with what he's doing, they're going to be aggressive, and I think he's going to continue to buy. We know they have a plan to continue to buy. How aggressively it's going to happen, I think it's going to be pretty damn aggressive, okay? So that's why I'm super bullish on MicroStrategy. It's like, imagine buying up a huge chunk of the world's gold supply, right? Like you had some dude come along and be like, all right, I'm going to buy up a huge percentage of the world's gold supply. I mean, that's what Michael Saylor's saying, except I'm going to buy the digital gold. Right? So you have a fearless leader here, even though it's decentralized. You got a fierce leader coming in going, dude, I'm going. Watch some of his videos. He goes, so somebody asked him the other day, like, what happens if Bitcoin goes down to $1? He's like, Bitcoin goes down to $1, we'll buy up all the Bitcoin. I mean, that's how committed this guy is. So I'm supremely confident in their strategy, number one. I'm supremely confident in their leader, number two. I'm supremely confident in Bitcoin, number three. So that's why I'm bullish on it. I'm supremely confident that the government, the U.S. government, is going to do something with the strategic Bitcoin reserve. They're going to do something. If they don't, Trump will have so much egg on his face, it'll be crazy. Okay. All right. So how does MicroStrategy get the 42 billion? It's simple. If you weren't on with me yesterday on the video, it's pretty simple. Number one, they borrow money and they buy Bitcoin. So the whole plan was, I'm going to borrow $21 billion and buy 21 billion of Bitcoin. And the other part of the plan was we're going to issue more stock and we're going to collect $21 billion and buy more Bitcoin. That's the plan. That's how simple it is. That's what they're doing. And that's what they're going to continue to do. Okay. Now, here's the other interesting thing, right? So MicroStrategy, they want to increase their stock, right? So they're voting on this, right? And they want to get authorization to go from 330 million shares of MicroStrategy to 10.33 billion to fund their Bitcoin purchases. Okay. So like, even if you wrap your head around that concept, they want to go from 330 million shares, right? The authorization to issue that to 10.33 billion. So I don't see a train that's stopping anytime soon. I mean, do you guys? I don't see it, right? The gift, it says you don't think that him selling shares aggressively week in and week out is slightly bearish. And yeah, I think the gift, like, to your point, I think that him being aggressive with selling the shares, this is my viewpoint, of issuing more and more shares. Do I think that is affecting the price to some degree? Yeah. Do I think it's causing it maybe to stay in the pattern that it's in and having caused it to go down to some degree? Yeah, but there's also other factors too, right? So I agree with you on that point. All right. I love it. We got other points of view. A train wreck's coming. Cool. So there's so many points of view on this. Everybody share your points of view. We're all here learning together, which is a cool thing. And like, everybody's entitled to their point of view. And hey, do we know what's going to happen in the future? No. Can we get educated and knowledgeable on what's going on? Yes. And the more knowledge we have about something, can we gain more power in it? Can we have more control on it? Can we make better decisions? Yeah. Which is my whole point of actually sharing stuff on this channel. Okay. And any stuff you want to share it in the chat box. We all learn from each other, which is great. Okay. So why is MicroStrategy buying Bitcoin? To keep it simple, really simple, hedge against inflation, right? a store of value that grows over time. It's like switching from storing wealth in a melting iceberg of cash to putting it into durable gold, also known as Bitcoin, right? It's like a metaphor for Bitcoin, all right? So what's going to happen long term? I don't know, guys. What do you think? Let's put some bets in there long term. Everybody put their bets on where they think MicroStrategy is going to. Where do you think Bitcoin's going to? I want to hear. Where do you all think it's going? Right? What's your bets? We'll put some friendly bets in here, not for money, but just to play a game. What do you think it's going to? Put in the chat. So John thinks it's a sophisticated MLM scheme at its finest. Okay, all right, gotcha. I don't think it's an MLM. In fact, and it's not a Ponzi scheme. But I totally acknowledge your point on it, and I do acknowledge that a lot of people are saying that, because there's a lot of people out there that I've heard, not a lot, but a handful of reporters and the press is like, it's a Ponzi scheme. And the truth is, I'm just going to put the facts there. It's just not a Ponzi scheme. It's just not. Okay. So data-wise, physical action of what they're doing, how they're actually buying more Bitcoin, it is definitely not a Ponzi scheme. Okay. So that's my point of view on it based on the data I have. We're more than welcome to share yours. Okay. Jake says it's going to go a lot more than it is now. What do you think, Dan, or the gift? What do you think? Where's MicroStrategy going to go in 2025? And then where's Bitcoin going to go in 2025? I'm curious. What does everybody think? I think personally, I think we're going to see, I think Bitcoin could go to 200. My conservative case on Bitcoin is 150. Okay. I think my bull case on Bitcoin is 200. I think as we get up to the 200 and we start nearing it, a lot of people are going to start taking profits. And again, that's my case of as high as it goes. How far it will fall back down, I don't know. Do I think it will fall back down? I think absolutely. I could be wrong on that, but do I think it'll fall back down? Do I think MicroStrategy will go way up and then shoot way down? I totally do. So full disclaimer on that, like I'm investing. I'm not saying anybody here should invest at all. But I do think MicroStrategy will go way up. And when it goes way up, I will take some profits. And then at some point, I think it will go way down. And so over a 4 and 5 year period, if you had the stomach to hold over 4 to 5 years, do I think they're both a rocket ride, Bitcoin and MicroStrategy? Absolutely. Will I sell out all my Bitcoin? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Will I take some profits? Yeah. Will I sell out a chunk of MicroStrategy in 2025? I think so. Okay. So that's kind of thing. So Chris is like, we go 900 MicroStrategy by the end of the month. By the end of the month, that would be amazing, right? That would be amazing. By the end of the year, yeah. I think we're going my 800 MicroStrategy is for me, that's my conservative prediction in 2025. And my bullish is between 1,000 and 1,300 on MicroStrategy for bullish. Okay. John says, I see Bitcoin newer all-time high second half of 2025, then a huge drop. Cool. I mean, how many, those of you, is this your first time sitting through the bull run and watching it go up and down? Second time, third time? This is my third time. So this will be my third time going through a bull run. Okay. And watching it. And in 2018, I bought my first Bitcoin. Okay. So this will be my third time witnessing what happens. All right. And I know it's very uncomfortable watching it go all the way up and all the way down. It's extremely uncomfortable. So personally, I am not going to watch that happen. I'm going to take some profits. Okay. Cool. So that's just a little recap of this video. If you're just joining us, we made a few things simple. Okay. I'm going to give the analogies and sum it up in 3 minutes. Number one, the first thing I made simple about Bitcoin is just understanding simply what it is. I hang out at parties with people, and everywhere I go, I talk about Bitcoin, and somebody's like, well, what is Bitcoin? Like, it feels like I'm buying something and I'm buying air. And my analogy today is like, it's really simple. Like, just like if somebody was to get together and put together a concert, and they were going to be like, hey, we're going to sell 21 million tickets to this concert, and we were going to sell no more than 21 million tickets. That would be a rule, right? They create a rule for the number of tickets they're going to sell to the concert. Now, if you think of Bitcoin as the greatest concert on earth, and 21 million people want to attend because there's only 21 million coins. And when you go buy a ticket to Bitcoin, it's like you're buying a digital certificate. That's it. It's like a digital ticket you're buying. Okay. And the digital ticket is proof that you own a ticket to the greatest money concert on earth. That's it. And what you're really buying is a piece of code. That's it. So it's like you're buying a piece of code. Okay. And then you have that code, right? And that's proof that you own the Bitcoin. Okay. So call it a digital certificate, call it a digital ticket, whatever you want to call it. But I think it's a ticket to the greatest money show on earth. And I think it's a ticket to the greatest money show that's ever existed on earth. And that thing is pretty cool, right? So we're witnessing history here. We're living through it. That's number one. Number two, just like a concert, they create the rules. The rules are there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin. So whoever created Bitcoin and came up with the concept, so, you know, Satoshi, we can say, is it a group of people? Is it one person? But Satoshi came up with Bitcoin and was like, here's the rules, guys. It's only going to be 21 million. That's it. Okay. So that's pretty cool, right? So we see this happen all the time. There's rules created to everything. So like, why should it be tough for us to understand that there's rules to Bitcoin? Simple. I kind of like the rules because versus gold, there's not rules on how much supply there is because we don't know. There's 2% more gold mined every year. Okay. Second thing is, I love Bitcoin because there's only 21 million. So the rules say there's going to be 21 million. That's all there will ever be. So the cool thing is that it is finite. So like if you knew that, you know, there was the greatest diamond on earth, and then all of a sudden you found that the greatest diamond on earth, there was another greatest diamond on earth and another greatest diamond and another greatest diamond. And all of a sudden you found there were all these great diamonds on earth. And then all of a sudden you found out there's so much supply of the diamonds. You don't even know how many great diamonds on earth there are. The value of that thing would probably go down a little bit because people would be confused. They wouldn't know the rules. They wouldn't know, are there going to be more diamonds that pop up? And if there's more diamonds that pop up, is my diamond worth less? Well, that's how money works. That's how the dollar bill works, right? You don't know, man. You're like, I think there's this much money on earth. And all of a sudden in 2021, the Fed hits the money printing machine, and all of a sudden there's this much money, and it just went up 27% in 1 year. Now there's this much money. How do you win the game? It's just like, it doesn't make sense. So I would like to play a game where there are actually rules so that I know that I can win the game. In the world of dollars, there are no rules per se in how much you can print. There's not. So if you don't know the rules of the game, and if you don't control the game and somebody else controls it, that's kind of messed up. So the beautiful thing that we love about Bitcoin is 21 million. Those are the rules. And there's no one person that controls it. And that's why we love, like I was talking about early on, we love the miners and we love the nodes. And I was saying early on, what the hell is a miner and what the hell is the nodes? They're computers. That's it. They're computers. Okay. And every transaction that's made, a miner comes along and verifies the transaction. And then they take the transaction. When you go buy Bitcoin, they stick it in a notebook. It's not an actual physical notebook. It's called a block. So when you hear blockchain, think of block as a notebook. And a little miner's coming along and he's like, I'm going to put the transaction in the notebook. Bing! And it's in the notebook. That's a block. And I'll put another transaction in the notebook. Boom! It's in the notebook. That's a block. So a block is made up, a notebook is made up of a lot of transactions. That's it. Okay? Why would the miners want to do this? Why would the miners want to actually verify transactions and then put them on the block and record them, have them recorded there? Why would they want to do that? Because they get paid. That's why. Okay? So that's what happens. They get paid. Simple, right? So now we got like a bunch of miners running around. They're mining. You want to buy Bitcoin? They're going to verify. Hey, do you have the money to buy the Bitcoin? So like you're like, I want to buy some Bitcoin. The miner comes along, verifies. You got the money. He wants to buy this much Bitcoin. Verifies the transaction. Boom. The miner's computer then sticks it on the notepad or on the block. That's what's happening. Sticks it on the block. And then Joe comes along, same thing. I want to buy some Bitcoin. Boom, boom. Comes along, buys a little piece, right? Maybe Satoshi, right? Buys it. Miner's like, does he have the money to buy it? Verifies it. Boom. Puts it on the block, the notepad. That's what's happening. Now, what they're using is like, you heard that like with the computers they use, there's like a very complex puzzle that they solve. So when a notebook fills up with transactions, the miners compete for that, right? So they're running around competing. Like think about a bunch of little treasure hunters running around, and the treasure hunters are coming around. They're mining all the Bitcoin, right? They're verifying all the transaction, filling up the block. And then the miner that comes along and completes the block, right? Then that block, once it's completed, filled up with all the transactions on it. And on average, do your own research and fact check what I say. There's anywhere between about 1,500 to 2,000 transactions on a block, also known as a notepad. I'm using the example of notepad. So once like 1,500 to 2,000 transactions fill up on the notepad, then the block goes on the chain, and it's now part of the blockchain, right? So that's what we talked about at the beginning of the call. And then finally, then who takes care of the network as well? We have the nodes, and they're like our friends. And they're like our friends running around with their computers. And on their computer, they have a copy of all the transactions ever made on the blockchain. So the nodes, people who run the nodes, like all the transactions ever made on a blockchain stored on this node, all the transactions ever on the blockchain on this node. So you have a bunch of friends running around, all sharing the same data with each other through these computers to verify and make sure it's the exact same data to keep the network intact. That's my simple explanation of it. So that's what we've been talking about the whole time. And the whole purpose of me sharing that is because, like, I try to use analogies and put it in simple terms. I'm not a computer guy. I can't sit here and tell you about all the technology that goes behind it. I'm not a technology guy. I'm just somebody who wants to understand the thing that I'm putting my money into. And I realized that if I do understand the thing that I'm putting my money into, and I realize, wow, this is pretty cool. No government controls Bitcoin. No central authority controls it. Wow, it's pretty cool. It's scarce. Just like sending an email, I can send Bitcoin. So I can send it fast. That's pretty damn cool. I can get that concept. And, my analogy of the greatest concert on earth, it's the Bitcoin concert. I want a ticket to it. I don't want to miss it. Okay. And pretty soon, instead of 19.5 million, all 21 million one day are going to be gone. It'll be out years into the future, right? But the supply is being gobbled up. And so the more the supply gets gobbled up, the more the demand's going to go up. The more that nation states come in and get involved, like El Salvador's of the world, like the U.S., that will eventually add their strategic Bitcoin reserve. I think it's going to happen. The more that this happens and nation states get involved, I mean, people are going to be gobbling up the Bitcoin. The more corporations that hold it on their balance sheet, like Microstrategy, more corporations are going to be gobbling up Bitcoin. And I think it's a race right now because people want to get it at 100K. And the whole idea is that one day Bitcoin will be at 1 million and one day Bitcoin will be at 13 million. Okay. And the way that we get to 13 million is a lot of people have done the math on this. Michael Saylor did the math on this. He says if Bitcoin does 29% a year from now till 2045, we'll have a $13 million Bitcoin. So the number sounds scary of like 13 million. I'll never get to 13 million. Yeah, but it's 29% a year. Will we ever get to $1 million Bitcoin? It's only 10x from here. Do I think we're going to get there this year? No. Do I think we will get to a $200,000 Bitcoin this year? Yeah. I think more. I'm thinking like my conservative case is 150. My strong case for it is 180. My bullish case is over 200. Okay. And if Bitcoin does that, MicroStrategy is going to go up by more than Bitcoin. Okay. That's just what I think. All right. Yeah, I get it on the gift, right? The issuing of shares and the decoupling. I get it. Like you're watching what he's talking about is the net asset value right now of with MicroStrategy. So you should go look up what they're doing. There's a bunch of videos on MicroStrategy and net asset value. And you want to go find out and look at charts on it. James at Invest Answers does a great job, and he shows you what you're talking about, what the gift is talking about here. And you should check it out and see. And there's great math on it that if Bitcoin goes to this number, MicroStrategy could go to this number. But again, with what's happening right now, to your point, the gift, like who knows? Last year, Bitcoin went up 121%, MicroStrategy 359%. Will it continue to go up by a factor of what is that, 2, 3, compared to what Bitcoin's going up? I don't know. And certainly right now of where it's at, it doesn't suggest that it'll do that. But again, my case for MicroStrategy next year is 800. And then I do think my bullish case, it'll break 1,000. All right. So that was what we talked about today. Stanley Wong's in there talking about a Saylor stated that he can accept a 1.5 NAV premium. We're getting close to 1.67 per MicroStrategy trackers. That's cool. Totally cool. Yeah, so Tony's saying everybody looks like a genius in the Bitcoin bull market. What will happen to MicroStrategy in the Bitcoin bear market? Hey, we just kind of watch what happens, right? To a certain degree of like what happens when Bitcoin goes way up and MicroStrategy goes way up, and then what happens when Bitcoin goes down and what happened to MicroStrategy. We just witnessed a little piece of it. So we could just observe that and kind of predict that if Bitcoin goes way up in the future and MicroStrategy goes way up, then if Bitcoin comes down, then MicroStrategy will come down harder. And by looking at the volatility of it, I love how Saylor explains it. He says what? He says that S&P 500 volatility is about a 15, and it's done about what 14% a year for the last 5 years. The S&P 500, Bitcoin is at about 60 volatility, and MicroStrategy is at 90 volatility. So we know the volatility is higher. You know, I think anything like this, if you're gonna look at Bitcoin, we look at it in 4 or 5 year time horizons, and we hold. I'm going to hold, but like I said earlier, I'll take some profits. Okay, but I'm not going to sell all my Bitcoin. I don't care what happens in terms of, in 2025, if Bitcoin goes all the way up and it shoots up, I'm not selling all my Bitcoin. There's no way. Okay, I will take some profits. All right. Hope this serves you. Yeah, what was the top NAV at its highest? It was it was over a 3 NAV at some point, right? The gift. We can look it up, right? We can look up what the highest NAV was, but it was over a 3 NAV at one point for sure. So we can look and find out. Great, we can look and find out. But we can talk about that maybe on the next call that we do. I'll break down the NAV for everybody here, and we'll put it in simple terms, and we'll talk about it. All right. Hope it serves everybody. It's always fun doing this stuff. It's always fun talking about things and getting very simple on them and making them simple. And if you have any questions or comments and want to leave it down below, leave them in the comment box. I'll try and reply to some of the comments. And then if you have any requests for the next time I come on, which will probably be tomorrow, let me know and I'll break something new down. Okay. Hope this serves you guys. Again, not financial advice. I'm not recommending anybody get into anything right now. Everything that I share, I've got into Bitcoin in 2018. I bought in a whole bunch more in last year when it was around 30,000. And I got into MicroStrategy like at the beginning of 2024, before the stock split, when it was super low priced. So, and I have not purchased any additional MicroStrategy recently. I mess around with some 2x leverage stuff, but I don't want to go into that here. Okay. Hope it serves you. I'll see you guys on the flip side. And thanks for being great. And thanks for being here. And it's always fun to grow together and learn about the future together. See you soon.